Good morning. Let's take the Parasha with us. So everybody knows that Hashem creates a world. He wants something from this world. He doesn't create it for just to have fun. And there's many different reasons why Hashem creates the world. It's either Tachlis HaTov Leheitev, He wants to do good with the world. The Tzarav Ben B'Yosov, He wants to refine us. Or maybe it's because He wants to have a dwelling place here below. But whatever your reason is, everybody is wondering and everybody struggles. How do I live the good life? How do I actually live in Hashem's world in a way that works? So if you go through the Parshas and you go out of the zone that you're just reading the Parasha because that's the portion of the week, you start realizing that the Parasha is talking to you. The Parasha is talking to me, you, and every Jew. So when you go into the early Parshas, you see a very interesting pattern. If you go into the Parsha of Noach, you see somebody who was attempting to do God's will in a certain way. He had a method. He knew that the world is evil. People are messed up. How are we going to change it? So he came up with a strategy. He builds himself a box. We call it a teva. He stands beside this teva, and for no less than 120 years, he preaches to the people. And he says, hey, people ask him, why are you building this box? What's going on? What's this teva? What's going on? There's no flood coming. He says, oh, you better believe there's a flood coming. If you're not going to straighten out, and you're not going to shape up, a flood, a deluge is going to come. It's going to wipe you off planet Earth. He was trying to get people to respond to a very primordial, basic instinct. It's called fear. And if I'm going to introduce you to a place of fear for your life, fear for your family, fear for your survival, maybe I'll get you to change. But we all know the end story. It didn't work. We call the Mabu Mei Noach. We call it the waters of Noach. Why is it called the waters of Noach? Because you brought the Mabul on yourself. And Chazal are very critical of Noach, even though Hashem himself says Noach ish tzaddik. Hashem says he was a tzaddik, but still we say Miktane Amuna Oya. He was a very small believer. Chassiduk masters taught, Ditchev taught, Miktane Amuna Oya, that means he didn't believe in himself. He didn't have enough belief in himself. He didn't believe in his power of tefillah. He didn't believe in himself. But whatever it is, the Parashas Noach is describing to you a method that somebody used to try to serve Hashem that seemingly didn't work. So when you go into the next Parasha, so it's very good to file away this message and say, hey, fear alone doesn't work. So let's see what else works. And then we go into the Parasha of Avraham Avinu. And Avraham Avinu also makes a teva. People aren't used to thinking that way. Avraham Avinu made a teva. Which teva? Well, the answer is he made a tent. He made a box. The difference was that in his box, he decided he's going to teach the message of what God is trying to teach us in a new way. What was his way? It says, Malki Tzedek Melech Sholom Hevi Lechem V'Yoyin. Malki Tzedek came with a new way. He brought Lechem V'Yoyin. He saw that there's a new way how to serve Hashem with Lechem and Yoyin. And he said, let me try that too. So he started to invite people in. And everyone knows the Gemara in Sota says, it's a medrash, that Avraham Avinu developed what's called Eshel. Achilu Shtia and Lina. An Eshel house. What was his Eshel house? He took that same box that Noach built, but instead of closing it up to save you from the flood, he said, let me invite people into it. So he invited people into the flood, to escape from the flood. He invited them into his shelter, into his tent. He had 4 open doors, and he said, come on in. So people came on in. Well, he did tell them, wash your feet beforehand, don't bring the Avodah Zarah in here. He did have some sort of boundaries, but he still said, take it in, come inside, let's all bring it in. People would come in, and he would serve them gourmet meals. He would serve them tongue, the best wines, the best breads, everything in the world. And they would sit, and they would eat, and they would fabring. And then he would talk to them about stuff that matters. He would talk about Hashem Echad. There's only one God. There's a monotheistic way of looking at the universe. You don't have to see everything scattered all over the place. It's a beautiful, unified world. And suddenly it's starting to take shape. People are responding. And the Gemara in Sota says It wasn't so simple. People would come and they would eat. And then Avram would tell them, Hav lo nevarech. Come, let's thank Hashem for the food you just ate. Let's bench. They said, bench? What's bench? I don't do benching. So he said, okay, no problem. You don't want to bench? He went inside, he brought them a bill. And on this bill, it was like, a $400 bill for a meal. It was like, a Nobo bill. And the people looked at the bill and they said, what, $400? I could have bought this in a takeout for $15. What, $20 I could have gotten a meal. You're charging me $400? So Avram said, hello, you're in a midbar. Who makes bread in a midbar? You know what infrastructure had to come in order that it should happen? I had to raise I have here a whole network of people. I have shepherds, I have a slaughterhouse, I have to salt it. There's a whole operation going on. You think wine ends up in the midbar itself? You went on a Chalamoy trip, and then you go, let's say, to the Intrepid, and you want to buy a bottle of water, and suddenly you see it's $6 a bottle of water. It's supply and demand. If you don't have it, you charge. They said, hey, Mishiro, Shiralo, when they saw that this isn't going to work out good, they said, what did you say about benching? You said something about benching before? So they would bench. And that's how he would introduce people to connecting to Hashem. The question everybody asks is that you know yourself that when you're forced to do something, the second you're out of that situation, you drop it. I mean, like, well, you're going to put a gun to my head, I'm going to say yes. Of course I'm going to say yes. I don't have a choice. But when I leave, I'm never coming back to you again. So what's the idea? I have a friend, Moshe Storch. He once told me this Gavald line. He says it wasn't his line, but I still love the line. He said, after you finish benching, don't forget to thank Hashem for the food you just ate. Such a Gavald line. So let's go a little deeper into it. We're all used to benching. We're looking at it like Avram Avinu calling people. They didn't want to bench. He said, you don't bench, you pay $400. So you got them to bench. And they said all the words. And then after they left, they said, but in real life, it's not lasting. That's if you understand that when he said Havla Navarech, he said bench, he said say the words. But in reality, there was no benching then. There was no words to say. There was only being grateful. So everybody knows the story from Pesach Kron says the story, very famous story from this Dr. Leibowitz. You know the story from Dr. Leibowitz? It's such a good story, it's worth repeating. And the punchline is that there was this Dr. Leibowitz, he's a doctor in some hospital, and one day he's in the cafeteria and he hears there's a code blue, and he sees this woman, all the paramedics, everybody's working on her, she's having a heart attack, and it's not working. People are giving up one after another, and he sees that it's done. He decides he's going to go give it a shot. Anyway, he goes inside and he's pumping and he's working and he's whatever you do with the defibrillators, and he was able to do. And mamash, after he gave up, he kept on going, and she came back to life. He sent her up into the ICU. 2 days later, he decides he's going to go check up what's doing with her. He had a little nagia. He wanted to make a Kiddush Hashem also. His name is Dr. Leibowitz, and she was like this Christian woman. So he goes upstairs, and as soon as he walks into the door, this guy is standing there and he yells, oh, that's the angel, that's the doctor who saved your life. And he looked at him, he didn't see him. He said, yeah, I'm her husband, I was standing behind the glass, I saw everybody gave up, you didn't give up, I saw how you were giving it all you got, you saved my wife's life. So this lady turns to him and she says, Dr. Leibowitz, what should I tell you? I should tell you thank you? Thank you, you say when somebody holds the door open for you. That's when you say thank you. But you gave me my life. How can I ever thank you? You know how? When I'm going to go home and I'm going to walk up the steps from my house, I'm going to open the door and I'm going to see my children, I'm going to see their faces that they have their mother back. I'm going to say, thank you, Dr. Leibowitz. And when I'm going to take a walk in the morning with my husband and I'm going to see the sun shining, I'm going to say, thank you, Dr. Leibowitz. And when I'm going to have my birthday and I'm going to blow out all the candles and all my kids and grandkids are going to be there, and I'm going to be experiencing that celebration, I'm going to remember And I'm going to say, thank you, Dr. Leibowitz. We call it the Dayenu Method. We once came up with a method called the Dayenu Method. At Pesach you say, Dayenu. What's this Dayenu? It's a method. The technique of Dayenu is that if a person wants to feel grateful, you have to go into the little details of life. And you have to say, if just for the fact that I was able to open up my eyes this morning, Dayenu. Thank you, Hashem. That's enough. If you can imagine yourself blind and then suddenly getting back your sight, you would say, Dayenu. And if just for the fact that I was able to sit up and put my feet down on the ground, Dayenu. For the fact that my hands worked, for the fact that I have clothing, the fact that I was able to go down, I had to eat, I have a car, it turned on. And if you go into little details of your life, which is pretty difficult, by the way, it's not an easy job, but if you can do it, you start experiencing gratefulness. And that's the method that Avraham Avinu would do when he sat with people. He didn't make them bench. He just went through with them the details of their lives and started to realize that all the scattered fractals of their life was all connected by one Hashem Echad. And they came to a place where they became grateful and they said, thank you Hashem! And Avraham becomes the Av Hamoin Goyim, he becomes the father of all nations. He's amazing. We still call ourselves, all religions today, all trace their way back to Avraham Avinu. He's the most amazing inspirational figure in the universe. And we would say, wow, Avraham, he figured out the way, check. But it's not so simple. Because we also know that as powerful and as successful and as inspirational as Avraham Avinu was, as hanefesh asher asa b'charon, all these souls that he made in Charon, from the Charon Af, people who were in a bad place and he brought them close to Hashem, they all disappeared later. That means they were inspired, they felt warm in their souls, but in the long run, nothing remained from it. And the question is why? So when you go into the Parasha of Avram, you say, look, he didn't do the Noach way of yelling at people and threatening them a flood's coming. He did the Hachalent way. He did the Hachalent method of inviting people in, peace and love. But on the other hand, peace and love alone don't work. In the long term, it's actually good for a short term. It can bring you into a good place. It's a geit nicht. So when you go into the next parasha and you come to Parashas Toldos, suddenly you start noticing a third way. And that's the path of Yitzchak. And Yitzchak is the path of Gevura. Yitzchak is the path of somebody who doesn't have any of the inspiration that his father Avram had. Avram has revelations, Hashem is revealing himself to him all the time. Yitzchak doesn't get anything. One time Hashem speaks to him and it's only about his father. If you look into the Parasha of Yitzchak, all that's happening is that he's struggling. He's digging be'eros. Most of the Parasha of Yitzchak is talking about he's digging be'eros, and the be'eros are getting stuffed up. People are sabotaging his efforts to get water. He's doing it again, it doesn't work, it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Until finally it works. And the question is, what's going on here? So just to backtrack a little, there's a tremendous secret at the end of Parshas Lech Lecha, Chayesara. When you go into the world of Eliezer, there's a very interesting detail that comes forth. Eliezer is sent by Avram to find a wife for Yitzchak, for his only child, Yitzchak, who's going to continue his legacy. So first of all, you would think that if Yitzchak is continuing Avram's legacy and he's the one, he should be the most chesed guy in the world. He's the one and only child, but he's not. He's just plain a Gevura guy. So he's going to find his Bashert, his wife. Eliezer gets sent. What does Eliezer do when he goes to find the matriarch who's going to be the mother of all the Jewish people? You know what he does? He prays. And he asks Hashem, please Hashem, I'm begging you, show me a sign how I should know who she is. What's the sign? So he has a clarity and he decides that the sign is going to be, he's going to test her out. Is she a woman that comes from a place of chesed? I'm going to ask her to give water to my camels. If she gives, I'm going to ask her for water. If she says, V'gam l'gemalecha eshka, and she's going to say, I'm going to give water to your camels too, then I know that she's the chosen one. So he goes out, and everything goes according to plan. He goes to this new place. He sees this girl, and he's wondering, is she the girl or is she not the girl? Okay, let me go test her out. But then suddenly, wow, he sees this crazy miracle. Water starts rising to her. And in his mind, he should have been thinking, that's crazy. That's nuts. That's unbelievable. Water's coming up. She's for sure that miracle girl we're talking about. But he doesn't do that. He doesn't seem like he's impressed with the miracle. He continues on with his original plan. And he goes over to this girl and he says, would you give me some water? And she says, sure. I'm also going to give water to your camels. And he says, okay, check. Why did he need to go through the entire process of what he originally made up? And the secret is that Eliezer is already setting the program for Yitzchak. He's setting Yitzchak's program. He's setting us up for what's to come. What Eliezer was doing was he was downloading a new way of being in the Bria. Many times, you have an inspiration, you have an Avraham moment, a Chesed moment where you know so clear what has to happen and you have a definitive plan, an action step you need to take. But then, Avraham disappears. And then you're out in the world and one of two things can happen. Either things are going to go more right than you expected it to go, or it's going to go more left than you expected it to go. This is a story where he sees an open miracle. But he sticks to his original commitment and he says, I made a plan, I had an inspiration, I prayed to Hashem, I'm going to stick it out and do what I made up to do. Do you know how much discipline that takes? You know how much gevura that takes? That when you see this amazingness, you say, no, I'm going to stick it out, the original thing that I made up. It's crazy. Because that's the method of Yitzchak. Yitzchak is teaching us consistency, no inspiration, sometimes. Let's see if you can do it again and again and again and again, what you originally made up. And that's going to be the vessel. And that's the whole life of Yitzchak. Yitzchak digs be'edos. And he digs it again. The whole Parasha. And he digs it again. It flops and he does it again. And they're fighting and he does it again. Until eventually there's a breakthrough. But you know what the secret is? You know, people could say, why can't I just have chesed? Why can't I just have peace and love? Why can't I just love everybody? Why can't I have like a family where peace and love? Why can't I make a yeshiva where I'm just going to accept everybody, let anything go? We're just going to go on trips. We're going to let you, we're going to buy you the cigarettes. We're going to go out on hikes. If you don't want to hike, that's okay. Come tomorrow. Okay, I'll try to motivate you. If it doesn't motivate you, it didn't work. In the real world, that doesn't work. You end up with a disaster. So we have Noach teaching us, just by threatening people, it's not going to work. We have Avram teaching you, peace and love works, but only after the world knows that if Hashem wants, He can bring a flood. Only after Parshas Noach can we teach you about Avram, because after Noach, the world got the message and they chap. You know, everybody knows, like Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky used to say, that the Malamdim in Europe, everyone, that they used to hit. Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky didn't hit, but he had a belt on the wall. That's what I once heard. I don't know if it's true or not, but the concept was that you need to have the belt on the wall. You have to be good enough, you shouldn't need to use it, but there has to be a belt on the wall. If there's no belt on the wall, peace and love won't lead you to lasting effects. Next comes Yitzchak, and Yitzchak, Eliezer already gets his wife on the nusach of consistency, of keeping to commitments, not getting the spell from wows, and not getting all beat out of shape, bent out of shape when you hit a ditch and somebody stuffs up your well. Let's do it ikvi, let's do it consistent. And then you come back to the original pasuk what the Holy Baal Shem Tov teaches. The Holy Baal Shem Tov says, Ve'ele Toldos Yitzchak ben Avram, Avram hoiledes Yitzchak. And we asked, why do we need to tell you Avram hoiledes Yitzchak? Didn't we know that? And the answer is, yes, we knew that Avram gave birth to Yitzchak. But did you know that Chesed gives birth to Gevura? Did you know that without boundaries and consistency, Chesed won't last? And that's what the entire Parasha Toldos is coming to tell us. And when you get this track, when you get onto this track, realizing that the whole Toldos is about realizing how Chesed must have Gevura, there must be structure, there must be consistency, there must be what's called in Chassidus, Oires Bikelim, suddenly everything takes on a new life. you realize Yitzchak liked Esav. How could he have liked Esav? I mean, he was a tzaddik. He was just fooled? And the answer is no. He really connected to Esav, because Esav is the Ish Sadeh. He's the guy who has no inspiration. He's the guy who's out there in the fields. He's the guy who Hashem doesn't reveal himself to him. He's the guy who has tendencies which are pulling him down. Yitzchak knew that if you're consistent and you fight and you battle and you keep on going, then you can develop. You know, Ish Sadeh, a person who's a guy in the field, he could be the most amazing Yid in the world. He could be a very shrewd businessman, and he can build up a chesed empire. He can be the guy who, he can be the guy who keeps the boundaries in check, making sure that there's no infiltration over here. He's the prize guy. But then there's secrets which come on later that lead us to the world of Yaakov. And that, my friends, is the shir for this week. Come along next time. And if you'd like to get our Gillion, you can send us an email on mytorahtoday@gmail.com. Thank you.